might wonder, why are we making such a big deal about this election when in fact you might have limited influence? Tony, what do you say to that?
Well, I think that it's true that in many ways the influence is limited, but if you think about the big difference it would make if I were Chancellor compared to one or two of the other candidates, then you can see by actually my election would make a difference. I mean, let's take the global sustainability issues. I mean, really, the university has global influence, but in terms of a voice for honesty about the predicament that the world is currently in, it is speaking less than its voice should allow. There are wonderful academics here in Cambridge. And the university can amplify the voices of people like in the Antarctic Survey or others who've done fantastic research, I mean, hard-hitting research on sustainability. But in a way, I think the university's sort of been in two minds because it hasn't been really certain whether it wants the world to know that it is fully behind the measures that are absolutely necessary if we're to limit environmental catastrophe. And those measures include the rapid divestment, not just of the university, but rapid divestment of society from fossil fuels. This isn't me making up some possible suggestion. It's an absolute truth now. That's the view of all climate scientists. I mean, when you think that 1.5 degrees, which was meant to be the safe point of global temperature rise, it has gone. We cannot stay below 1.5 degrees, although, you know, there's some possible, people might say, oh, well, we've got to wait a few years before we say that's absolutely certain. But actually, the climate scientists that I listen to have said that's the case. They say, the climate scientists say 2 degrees, the possibility of staying below 2 degrees may have gone within 10 years. Now, universities are truth tellers. And if they have one area of influence, it's to speak out very clearly. When you have responsibility for thousands upon thousands of students, you have responsibility to speak out about them flourishing in the future. You know, when you stand giving a speech at a graduation ceremony, you must have in your mind, what are we doing in this university to ensure that these students will have a viable future on a planet that is not just warming up rapidly, but rapidly losing its biodiversity. This is kind of miserable to think this, except what makes it less miserable is it's more miserable to hide away from the truth, it seems to me, than it is to face reality.
Yes, Tony, we all know this critical situation. So talking about your own core principles that you have highlighted on your social medias and talking everywhere. So your idea of a reverse Manhattan project for for planetary survival is truly inspiring. So
Yeah.
it's such a powerful image, and I'm really curious, how do you see this ambitious goal actually playing out here at the universities? Like, what specific strategies or new collaboration might we see in our research and teaching that really lean into Cambridge's unique strengths?
Well, it's allying the best of the environmental sciences and climate sciences within Cambridge to work in a coordinated way in Cambridge, and then to lead by drawing together the efforts in other universities. I mean, people have been talking for decades about what the environmental predicament requires. They talk about it as, like the challenge that the UK faced in the Second World War, or that how Roosevelt tried to get out of the Depression in the States, and so on. I mean, it is of that order. So to give it the name, a reverse Manhattan Project, trying to preserve mega life instead of creating the means for mega death, it seems to me it is the notion that fits what universities can do. So it's related to my previous point. Face up to the reality. And then once you've faced up to the reality, it becomes clear that this is what universities have to do. And of course, they have to collaborate. It's not a competition. It has to be a collaboration globally. And it needs to unite both the physical and biological sciences and the social sciences. Because what part of this project is understanding how are we going to best survive in a world which is heating up and increasingly threatening our food supply. So, if not now, when? If not now, never. This is the time. And that's why, of course, I would like to be Chancellor in order to give voice to these issues. Look, I'm not a personally very wealthy person. I actually think of myself as wealthy because, I have enough income, I have a home, I have a lovely life, I have a beautiful family, and so on. I'm looking out of my window, I can see green. I mean, I have a life well worth living, but I can't mobilize vast resources. But if I believe that universities would catch on to this idea because in their hearts, they know this to be important. And you can think of like the network of climate scientists who have been saying similar things across the UK and across the globe, sort of drawing together. And of course, there will be funders for such a project, I believe.
Yep. Yep.
It's in all our interests. It's in all our interests.
Correct. So your stance on divesting from fossil fuels and the arms trade is very clear, and it's something many of us feel strongly about. I'd love to hear how you'd approach accelerating the university's progress in this area. So, what specific steps do you see as being most effective in really ensuring our investments genuinely align with our core values?
I mean, really, what you've just said in a university shouldn't need to be said, should it? Because we understand people's core values not by what they say, but by what they do. So if you're to understand the meaning of what a value is, a value is a deep-seated belief which operates as a push to action. You can't understand a value without thinking about what is the action that it pushes you towards? So to act consistently, it seems to me, of course, the university must be very clear in its divestment. The university itself has gone some way to divesting from fossil fuels, but still reserves the right to accept large donations, if large funding donations. It hasn't turned down that possibility. It has to just separate entirely, and the colleges have to do the same. I mean, it's leadership, isn't it? You know,
Yes.
the university, the college, the colleges, they have to show leadership for the students because they care about the students. So put that into operation, put this duty of care into operation. I mean, I came up with an awful word about the how you could characterize our age at this period of life. And it's a word, nepoticide. Literally, it means grandchild murder. So can you think that, how do you lift your head up if you're carrying out actions which are going to lead to the huge difficulties in life of yours and everybody else's grandchildren? I do have grandchildren, but when I look in their eyes, I feel like I'm looking in the eyes of all children, and I want them to be able to look in their eyes of their grandpa and think, oh, well, grandpa knows about this stuff. He'll do his bit. And that applies to every member of the university, if you like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The consideration of our future generation is
Yeah.
what we should envision at this point,
Yeah.
which is not looking so great.
No, how to
Yes.
be a good ancestor. Let's be good ancestors.
Of course. Good ancestor, yes. That is a very valid point. So we have Dr. Renata. She has a question to ask you, Tony.
Okay, lovely.
Hi, Tony. It's
Hi.
such a pleasure to be here. And to have someone who come from education.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
I
You're from
read your
education too. Yeah.
I read your statement. Yeah, I really like it when you say that how should we live together? Then I was thinking about the link between inequality and sustainability in particular,
Yeah.
because until there's not inequality, how you can look at each other as an equal. A great problem of the sustainability in the world is related of a historical framework, how we see each other. If you could let me know what do you think about inequality, sustainability, and the impact, especially in our days. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm with you, Renata, in that when I ask how should we live together, it's not how should we, the rich people of the world, or the people in the rich countries of the world, how should we live together? It's how do we, all humanity, but it's not just humanity, because we won't understand how we should live together unless the we is broader than that, unless it includes animal life and birds and trees and plants, because we're part of an ecosystem, of course. And we've forgotten that when we say we, our survival depends on that we being a very broad notion, which includes everything within our ecosystem. I mean, what's happened, I think, is that the morality of equality is now being caught up with the science of sustainability, because to create a sustainable world, the place where the people who have to use less resources, of course, are those who use the most. You can't ask someone who has no resources, who uses no energy, who's scraping together a livelihood. There's no way they can cut back. So the cuts in resource use have to come from the rich nations and the richest in rich nations and the richest in poor nations. But it also has to come out of, it seems to me, a sense of common humanity and commonality with other people and other living things. And it's a beautiful thing. You know, I mean, really, a lot of us around have been talking about, we never talk about sufficiency anymore. Nobody talks about sufficiency. What is enough? You know, it's become that what you're meant to aspire to in this world is an absurd level of wealth that you will not be able to spend in your lifetime, but actually, in reality, is taking away the possibility from countless others. So, you know, we want a morality which ends with sufficiency, and also, but it's sufficiency for us all. I mean, the idea of human rights, you know, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Rights mean nothing unless they're rights for everybody. So it was kind of a statement of equality, 1948, which we've not lived out.
Thank you.
So,
You're welcome.
yes, truly, that is a very, very nice answer, and I can truly resonate with your idea of being, content, being happy what we have, like a minimalist lifestyle. We really, truly don't do, people don't consider being equal here. Of course, the wealth is not equally divided, and you're addressing on denial, resistance, and inaction. When it comes to climate change, as we are speaking about it, so when it comes to climate change, it's just such an enormous hurdle. So with your background, how do you believe Cambridge can best use its incredible intellectual leadership to foster understanding and really push for action and these critical global issues? So like both within the universities and out in the wider world. So what do you think about it?
Well, I think it's sort of within some of my previous answers, I think, because I mean, I think it's a big step. There is a kind of big step that the university needs to take. And that's why I call myself that I want to be a critical, loving friend to the university. So just to be a critical and very truthful person, very truthful to the university, because one of the things the university needs to do, or I would like the university to do, is, in a sense, audit all its efforts on environmental sustainability and have an honest check on whether they're mutually supportive. I mean, it's not so to single out one activity. I will single out one activity. There are people in the university who've got very keen on the idea of refreezing the Arctic, because you know Arctic ice is melting. If Arctic ice melts, it doesn't reflect heat and light from the sun back out of the earth, and so the earth absorbs more heat and so on. It's an unpleasant feedback loop. So people have discovered that, you know, if you take water from under the ice and pump it up above the ice, because the temperature above the ice is actually colder, it will freeze. Now,
Yeah.
of course, the world isn't a fridge, it's a hothouse. So you're doing this in the context of a hothouse. It's kind of a fantasy. So the audit has to, and I mean, this isn't even me speaking. It's well, it is me speaking, and it's what I believe. But also, I mean, there's a professor of environment and engineering at the university called Julian Allwood, who calls these kinds of activities, he calls them unicorn, magic beans, I think, fertilized by unicorn's blood. You know, now I want these people, you know, I think we have to do an audit. So the university starts to pull a little more, everybody pulling in the same direction. And I think that will be helped by a kind of determined honesty. Look, and I do understand how little impact I can make, but the impact I can
Yes.
make is greater. It's greater because I do speak out. I am an honest person.
Yes,
I have
of
got
course.
deep values. I do care very, very deeply about what happens in the future. And I'm not easy to silence. So, you know, you've got to try in this life.
Yes. Yes, Tony. I have another one simple question. So you have also brought up the impact of student fees on fair recruitment, which is absolutely vital for making our university truly inclusive. So
Yeah.
from your perspective, how can Cambridge best ensure that financial consideration never get in their way of recruiting brilliant, talented individuals from all backgrounds? How can we foster an even more diverse and vibrant academic community this way?
The way in which universities are funded has got to change. And I think it will change. I'd like it to change very quickly because a lot of universities are in trouble now. And when you think about reducing, I mean, and universities have survived on students coming from abroad and bringing quite high, paying quite high grants, I mean, high fees into the university. And then if that's
Yes.
reducing, there's universities across the country are in real trouble. Cambridge less than most because of its
Yeah.
endowments. But I think the university has to be a voice, which is a voice of collaboration with other universities, actually, about a different funding system. I think
Yeah.
once that student fee went up to 9,000 a year, it is a strain to be saddled with that level of student debt.
Yes.
And and especially if you've got rich parents, even moderately off parents, they help you. But if you've got
I
poor
can tell.
parents,
Yes.
how can you do
Yeah.
that? I mean,
Yes. So
really,
recent.
those
Yes. To add.
go on.
Mhm. So add to that, Tony, recently I have seen a father protesting on the high fee structure just outside our King's College gate. And he was heartbroken. He wanted his daughter to study, but he was not able to. And speaking with myself, I was also not able to cope up with the high fee here. But fortunately, I got scholarships now. So
Yeah,
if the university go ahead with more scholarships and funding opportunities for students from these
yeah.
backgrounds, perhaps it might help.
Yes, I think that's true. I think it's a double strategy because it probably is not going to, that can work out a bit for Cambridge, but it won't work out for, because if you're feeling responsible across the country for students from relatively poor backgrounds to be able to get a higher education and things are difficult, then it's a double strategy. Both, yes, let's find grants for the poorest students and
Mhm.
let's try and change the funding system. It was Lord Brown who produced the report which hiked the student fees from 2000 and from 3,000 to 9,000. Maybe you didn't know that. No. Well,
We are not.
that's another reason why some people are not so keen on him becoming Chancellor because he was part of the ways in which students were all saddled with these very high fees.
It's lovely, Tony. So we have
Yeah, thanks.
JP.
Yeah,
A few
yeah, I have a
questions.
few more questions
Oh,
too.
good.
And good that we covered some of these social impact issues.
Yep.
I have another question on sustainability,
Sure.
more in that field. And as some of you know, I'm also a member of a student organization called Plant-Based Cambridge,
Sure.
which in recent years has celebrated several big successes, including a vote by the student body, which by majority was in favor of making university catering plant-based. And I understand you are a supporter of plant-based Cambridge. And nonetheless, back to my question that I had at the beginning, given the limited power the Chancellor has, and also given what limited impact even such a vote had on the university as a whole, because there are so many colleges, there are so many departments, there is the university union, and you can't just make a big change, even if the students vote in favor of that. It didn't have a huge effect because every college can still decide for themselves what they want.
Yeah.
And then the university union also has the board of trustees, which can veto things. Even if the students vote for something, they can veto that. I understand. I'm not part of this organization, but that's how I understand it. So again, given the seemingly limited powers a chancellor has, how could you make a difference in such a role on such an issue, for example?
Well, I think it's the power you have probably is in the framing of the change and really understanding why it's important for the university to show the university administration, management, senior staff to show leadership and be clear that what they're not saying is that, you know, in people's private time, they can have their own journey to take. It's not you're condemning people if they don't have a plant-based diet, but at this time, it's one thing that universities and colleges can do to show that they are helping their students into what is a rational and moral future. So I think it can be framed in that way. I mean, I'm sure that you have made great efforts yourself and within the organization, and it probably be quite useful to you to have, and others who come after you in that group, to have a chancellor who supports you and amplifies what you're trying to do.
On that, I very much agree. And of course, an organization like Plant-Based Cambridge would be happy to have a chancellor who is supportive. And as far as we understand, there might be others, but we are not aware of anyone else who has publicly spoken in favor of this campaign. Although there may be others, I just don't know. But again, as my role here as a critical moderator, I would like to ask once more to be maybe a bit more concrete. What exactly could you do in your role as a chancellor? For example, do you have the power to call in the masters of the colleges for a meeting, and then they can't say no because of your role or because of your charisma or because of your perseverance? Do you have any ideas what you could do?
Well, I think you put it there. I think you can. I'm sure you can't. I would say you can't force the masters of colleges to attend a meeting on fossil fuels or paying everyone the living wage, which I didn't mention earlier. It's an equality issue. You know, colleges which still don't pay everybody a living wage, well, I think you could call a meeting on that, to be honest, and the ones who didn't turn up, it still would make the press all right. I think you've got that kind of leverage because just highlighting the issue could get publicity both within the university and beyond the university. So yeah, it's I think persistence is important. And if you're clear about what it is that you feel you're in the role to achieve, then I think it will have some impact. I mean, another area is just when I think, well, I've been in the city for 50 years, I'm kind of connected to loads of a large number of community organizations here who have an interaction with the university. So you can imagine, I'm not going to stop meeting. If I'm Chancellor, I won't stop meeting with those community organizations or listening to their voices. Nobody else has listened to their voices in the way that I have. And I had a meeting the other day where it was called The Responsibility of Cambridge University towards the citizens of Cambridge. Well, that's who I am. I do have those kinds of, create those kinds of occasions. And so on that occasion, I I asked the university administration if they would come and speak up and say something, and they said, well, they couldn't take part in an event which was part of the campaign. But in a way, that tells you, I mean, they're very nice people, actually. They would take part in an event like that, which I will continue to organise such events in the future. If I were Chancellor, they'd be there. So that dialogue would be opened, both with me and then with this network across the communities of Cambridge. Is that answering your question, JP?
In some way, yes.
Which way is
I
not?
mean, I do understand that that it helps to have someone in this role who is supportive of a campaign like this, and I understand that that you would make an effort to bring about change, and you are probably, as Manjari also said, the most local candidate out of the 10. And regarding that, I wanted to touch on another topic. You are the co-founder of Friends of the Cam. Is that right? Is that
Yeah.
right? That is the
Friends
name
of the
of
Cam.
organization.
Sometimes we say Friends of the River Cam, Friends of the Cam. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is that about, and how could that help in your role as Chancellor?
Well, I couldn't help but ask the university to be a friend of the Cam. And to be a friend of the Cam, you have to be concerned about what's the problems with the Cam. Well, the problem is it's not a natural, it should be a natural stream running on water that's filtered through the chalk. But it mainly runs in the summer, especially on wastewater. It's a highly polluted river. So we campaign against taking too much water out, putting too much pollution in, and then you've got to look around. I mean, Cambridge is I say is a gold rush city. It's kind of I mean, the government and at the moment there's been an organization set up called the Cambridge Growth Company. The intention is to double the size of Cambridge. Well, you'll have no river left if you double the size of Cambridge. Where's all the pollution, the waste going to, which regularly ends up in the river? If you multiply it that amount, double it, there's going to be huge problems for the river. So it's kind of, I saw it. I mean, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Um, I saw,
Bless you.
thank you, thank you. I saw the idea of Friends of the Cam as a way of drawing people into understanding the interaction between us and nature, which is part of understanding the human predicament, if you like. But because everybody loves the river and they're connected to the river, it's a way of drawing people in. And so each year we have a River Rights Festival on June 21st, Midsummer Day, which people feel is, has some significance in their lives. It's the turning point of the year and a turning point of the year. And so, yeah, so it's drawing people into that a different kind of understanding of their place in nature, which again is part of the role of a university to understand, to help people into a realistic view of what their place in life is. So, what do you think? There's a few other people here, and it'd be lovely to hear their voices, but I can't. Margaret and Anita and Simon and whoop, I lost. Oh no, I haven't. Hi, Simon.
Can I ask a question?
Great, thank you.
I obviously share the concern about how little the Chancellor can do.
Yep.
On the other hand,
Yep.
given that previous Chancellors include Stanley Baldwin, Jan Smuts, Arthur Balfour, and Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, we should be extremely grateful, historically speaking, that the Chancellor has very, very few powers. And one of the most exciting aspects of your candidacy is the challenge it poses precisely to that tradition. We have to face the fact that the university has a tradition of massive collaboration with capital and the elite. That's not news. And that its collaboration with those forces has got, exactly as you've said in your candidacy statement, more and more and more evident and dramatic, especially around the climate crisis, but of course not just. So one question that I would have for you is, you've done a series of remarkable things during your career, for example, about inclusion. I mean, one of the things that I admire almost the most about what you've done is the inclusion index and the way in which you've taken such an active role, not just within the institution, but elsewhere. Trying to think about this in the subcontinent, trying to think about this in Swaziland, in Eswatini, and so on and so on. How do you think this institution is doing? How do you think the university is doing around the issue of inclusion? And I'm not suggesting that as Chancellor you can make any difference, but what should we be doing to improve that? Because it's an area that you've thought about and acted on so much.
Yes, yes. Well, you may know, I don't know, in the later editions, I talk about the process of putting inclusive values into action. And I think it relates, I mean, this is sort of central to my work and my work in education, but also to my relationship with organizations, is that organizations, if you press hard enough, they make themselves vulnerable through their statements of purpose and values. Take the issue of discrimination. The university says it's one of its core values is to be against discrimination. Well, who can vote in this election? I mean, you've got full-time members of staff who can't vote. I mean, it's antiquated, and really, I hope, any other chancellor should have looked at that and thought, "Look, this is an easy win because this can't be right." So I kind of think, while you've got very little influence, could a university retain its exclusion of people from the vote, for example? Um, I mean, I've had the encouragement for freedom of thought and expression, which is another one, of course, that the university trumpets. But then you celebrate. The consequence of that is that if people express themselves freely, you celebrate it. And okay, it can be awkward for the university, but you say, well, I've taught you well. And then, it's an opportunity for dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an opportunity to slap injunctions on protest, I have to say.
No.
That's not the response of appropriate response of a university, it seems to me. But I have a kind of system over the years. I've got a system for development. If the university wanted, because I can support some change. I mean, you may know. I mean, I have developed these ideas of organizing change in an organization through the development of cultures, policies, and practices, with cultures being at the heart, because that's what enables change to be reproduced over time through the students and staff of a university, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, that's where you're looking to see, well, of course, and that's where how somebody like me becoming chancellor, it's a shift of culture, like you were saying. Who are all the other people? They're not people who embedded in the communities of the city. So it would be very interesting to see, what kind of impact that makes. I mean, I'm not somebody said, or somebody came to another discussion I had actually with Wyn Evans, and he said, well, how could we be sure that, as Chancellor, you would be able to be contacted? Well, I mean, I'm here, in the city. I'm in the market square every Saturday. I mean, where else am I going to be?
Yeah. Yes, I have to say that is almost my least serious concern about being able to reach you. I think that's going to be pretty straightforward in comparison with some other candidates.
Yeah.
If I'm allowed a supplementary, then I wonder if we have a way of, I don't know how to put this politely, dealing with the issue around free speech and the current policy of the bizarrely named Office for Students on that issue. What I mean by that is, and this is a very familiar point to you because of your own work, we have this irony that the forces that demand that Cambridge University defend free speech are completely intolerant of vast amounts of free expression. The issue of Palestine is a spectacular example, right? It turns out that free speech is, from their point of view, highly indexical. It has to be free under very specific conditions. And I'm not asking you, as potential chancellor, I'm just asking you because you're so wise about these things. Is there a way that you can see of us collectively dealing with that threat? Because that's how I see it. I mean, the nature of the threat is that the Students' Union and other organizations face legal prosecution if they can be said to endorse publicly views that don't meet with the approval of the regime. And that is in the name of free speech. That's the irony that we're in at the moment.
Well, I mean, I think the concept that I would use here is dialogue, and that's a fundamental concept for it for in a university. I think if the truth be known, I think there'll be large common areas of the university where dialogue is not encouraged. I mean, I had the experience recently of filling in the document sent round by the alumni for free AFS, alumni for free speech.
Yes.
Which all the candidates, well, most of them filled in. Now, I would say I'm probably the person standing as Chancellor who's most supportive of freedom of expression.
Indeed.
And dialogue. I'll talk to anybody. I would even talk to the people who wrote the survey that I had to fill in. Took quite a bit of time, and it took quite a bit of time because it was quite hard to kind of second guess, to try and work out what on earth are they asking me here. And I tried to be extremely honest about what I was saying. But at the end of it, they rated me very low, because what they don't want is freedom of expression. They don't want encouragement to dialogue even with themselves.
No.
They want to lay down some rules about what can be said and what shouldn't be said. And even you can imagine behind it is even the threat of litigation if they get that threat. So I think one's strength is really pointing out what these characters are about and pursuing dialogue, freedom of expression and thought as being at the heart of a university, and including dialogue with people that you don't agree with. I mean, I'll say on the issue of Palestine, I deliberately seek out people who disagree with me.
Sure.
I've had a conversation, probably we've spoken to each other for about 28 hours with somebody who has a very different view on Palestine to me, another Jewish person. Just because anyway, I mean, partly it takes me back to the arguments I have with my dad, but it's that's how it seems to me that's what we should be doing if we really wanted to talk to people who disagreed with us and they wanted to talk to us, which this particular case that's really been true of, then I think we damp down or we get past a lot of the issues.
Thank you. I have to go. I just want to wish you all the best and express my support and congratulations on speaking out. It's very much appreciated.
Well, your presence here is very much appreciated, Simon. So
thank you, boss.
Thank you.
That was it.
Yes, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Simon is also from Darwin, so it's good to see fellow Darwinians for me here as a
that's
of Darwin myself.
That's lovely, and it's gratifying that he kind of knows what I've been up to. I think that's nice.
Great. I see we have a couple other people who haven't asked questions, and if you don't have any questions, that's of course fine. But if you do, I would say now is the time, because we are almost at the hour mark. So if there's something you would like to say, just put it in the chat. Checking now, I think there's nothing in the chat, or just raise your hand.
Well, I think some people don't like to speak, so of course
that's fine. Yeah, you don't have
maybe one final question for me.
Yes, Michael.
Yeah, Tony. Yeah, well, you said one of the things that you would like to is not to be branded as business as usual. Once you become elected, you're not going to be business as usual. And with that, what kind of change, or what kind of concrete things are you planning to do in your first maybe 100 days or first few months that's going to be really concrete and visible to students?
Well, I think it's probably a continuation of the things that I started doing during this campaign. I made sure I started going to things. I went to the showcase on sustainability put on by the Sustainability Administration at the university. I went to the Cambridge Zero event. I mean, things that I'm interested in, but I don't know if other Chancellor candidates went to these. So my first 100 days, I will be very visible. And I'll want to meet people and enjoy the pleasure of hearing students talking about their concerns and interests. So I think that will make a difference. I won't be returning to my palace of an evening.
So it would be listening to the students. Your first 100 days.
Well, I mean, listening to the students and to staff. And I think what's really important is that people understand that you value everybody, and that does mean every member of staff and all students. So you've got the kind of division which has got greater recently between the sciences, the physical and biological sciences, and engineering on the one hand, getting all the publicity and being thought to be connected to economic growth and so on, and then the humanities sort of, and the social sciences sort of feeling less attention. But the humanities are, of course, of equal importance. And it's almost, when I talk to people who teach in the university in the English department or history, it's almost like they've given up expecting to be given attention by the university, I mean, apart from the few very famous people, but it's as if, there are areas of the university which are seen as less valuable. Well, that's not my way.
Okay, thanks for that.
Particularly, it's not my way amongst staff, and that means, library staff, kitchen staff, as well as academic staff.
It's important to remember all of them, I agree.
Yeah.
So unless anyone else has a urgent last-minute question, I would say let's conclude the Chancellor Sustainability Debate Series for today. Tony Booth, thanks very much for having joined us and for having answered our questions and those of our guests and viewers today. As I mentioned, tomorrow we have Gina Miller and perhaps also Wynne Evans. And I just checked their statements and I couldn't find the word sustainability in their statement. So let's see how that's going. But nonetheless, they agreed. So I'm sure they'll have something to say on the topic.
Well,
we wish you all the best, Tony, with your...
So, Professor Booth, hearing your vision, it's incredibly clear that you are prepared to truly fight for what's right for Cambridge and for our planet. So we at the Sustainability Society are genuinely motivated by this spirit of yours. And is there any closing note you want to include for us and for the university?
Well, I think only it's been a huge pleasure. When you're with a group of people and you can sort of even hear, how do we do it on Zoom? We create a sort of sense, a feeling of dialogue. I learned from some of the best educators in the world, that's what you have to try and do, whatever the circumstances. So you reach out to people. So that's my feeling, is that there's an interaction between us, despite the fact that we're only on Zoom. And it would be lovely to see you in person, and I hope I do at some point.
Of course, Charlie. We are also looking forward to it. Hope we make it. Yep. It was very nice listening to you. We are truly inspired. And all the very best from our society.
Thank you, Manjari.
Thank you, everyone.
Michael,
thank you, Tony.
And JP, and Renata.
Thank you so much. Love it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.